Hello, my name is Deanna Southard. I will be presenting our final project for CSCI 5448. My teammate and I are both distant students, and we are unable to schedule a time to meet together and present this jointly, so we're going to be doing it separately. Our project was an Android application called a hike tracker, and the basics of the hike tracker is that it will map all of the 14ers in Colorado, and if you don't know them, a 14er is any of the mountain peaks in Colorado that's over 14,000 feet high. It's a goal of a lot of people to hike each and every single one of them, so that's why our app would be useful. So the app will track which of the 14ers you've hiked, when you hiked it, and it will also keep track of how long it took you to hike each individual one, and keep a running total of your average hike time. So I tried to cast my phone to my screen here on my computer, but it was just going too slow, so I'm going to be splicing this video with different screencasts I've captured on my phone, and I'll be describing what I'm going to be doing as I do it, and then you'll be able to see it. So for our first use case, it'll be if you want to start a new hike and have it record the hike as you're hiking it. So what you will see is I would open up the hike tracker app, and I had previously opened it up and entered in my name, so it'll display my name. At this point, I don't have any hikes recorded, so it'll say I've climbed 0 summits, I have 0 average length, and I haven't had any most recently recorded. So I'll click on a button called the 14ers, and that will load up a Google map with all of the 14ers in Colorado mapped out. And I can click on a couple of different ones to see where they are, what that one is. It'll tell you each of the individual ones' locations and locations. So the current location button to figure out where you were, the mountain peak closest to you. So I'm gonna pretend like I'm climbing Pikes Peak. So I'll click on Pikes Peak. I'll click on the info window again to start the hike, and it'll load up a hike activity screen which has a timer, and I can hit start, and I'll start recording how long I'm going, and I'll pretend to hike up the mountain, hike back down. It's been a couple of, depending on how fast you are, it's been like a couple of hours. So after you're done, you'll hit the pause button and the review hike data, and I'll tell you are on Pikes Peak, the date, which is today is the 7th, so it'll say the date and the average length. And I've done this in 14 seconds, so it's not, that's what the timer recorded. So then I'll hit save, and there's a little message that says hike was saved. It'll return me to my main screen, and I'll increment my summits count because that was a new summit that I've hiked, and I'll also increment or fix my new average length and tell me what my most recent peak was, and that was Pikes Peak. So I'll be splicing in that video right now, I guess. Okay, now we can walk through a second use case, which would be if you wanted to manually enter in a hike. So you would again have the hike tracker open, click on the history button, and there is a button that says enter new hike, and this one has some data already entered in as a default. It has some values entered in as a default, like the current date, and a 0 as a time. And we picked an amount to be the default peak. So you can click on any of the change peak button. So if instead of Mount Snuffles, I wanted it to be Gray's Peak, I could change the date, say it was like last Tuesday, the 1st, and change the length and say it was like an hour. And I could hit save, and then that updates my summit count because it was a different summit, and it also changes the length. So the first one that I entered in I entered it automatically, it was only at 14 seconds. It was really short, and so this next one was an hour, and so it spliced the two of them together, and that was a different. I have a new average hike length. Okay, so with our particular application, we decided to go with layers architecture, and you can see that here in the class diagram. This is the overall class diagram. You can see the different colors indicating the different layers. Up here, we have the GUI layer, which is what the user sees. Then we have a green data access layer, a brown a data structure layer, and then a gray the data storage layer. And we went with this particular architecture because we could see this application could be really, if it got really popular, right now we're storing everything on the user's phone. So all of the hike data, all of the mountains, and the user itself is stored in its own user table. And if this application became popular, we could see some features that you'd want to add. Like you'd want to be able to share your data with your friends. You'd want to read their history, and maybe even have like a meetup to hike function, or a little messaging service. And maybe you want to create like little user icons. If it became popular, it would become too heavy to store on a single phone, and it would be much better to serve it and to store everything into a cloud server. So in our class diagram, we could replace this data storage layer, removing the SQLite that's on Android and changing it instead to being like a cloud SQL server. And that would be really easy to do, and it wouldn't disrupt the rest of the Android app at all. Also, if we wanted to update like parts of like adding that user icon, we could just update the user structure, the user data structure here to include like an icon, and things like that. So we could update and tweak layers without messing with the whole application. I was particularly excited about this because I hadn't done very much work with SQL before, and I'd only done like a really simple Android project before this, so I learned a lot about how Android works and how SQL works. And I also was really excited about making a project that I'm probably going to use myself, because I would like to hike all the 14ers myself someday. It was much better to have had that initial design period where we figured out what work needed to be done, because both my partner and I worked on it in between a lot of real life stuff that was going on, and so it was nice to be able to show up and look at the work that had been done and have like a framework for exactly what needed to be done. So it made every minute that we were working on the project count, better than sitting there and having to figure out like, well, what do we do next, because we had all of our work mapped out for us. So we learned a lot about about how important it was to design everything as completely and thoroughly as possible. It also helped with being able to divvy up the project, because I could say like, I'm going to work on this portion, and my partner would work on a separate portion, and when we were merging our different branches together, there was usually no conflict because we had our work separated, and we were able to not get into each other's way. And then on top of that, when we looked over what the other person had done, it made sense because we knew what each method was supposed to do. Maybe not exactly how it did it, but we knew what it was supposed to do, and we could rely on our framework to keep our project really well thought out and well put together. So I am thinking about trying to push this application to the Android store maybe in the next month, and if anybody's interested, feel free to send me a message and let me know, so I would have an idea. Thank you very much.